Welcome, all of you fellow Arcanists out there, to the Frith Guild podcast, where we explore an amazing world full of mystical creatures and their partners. Our hosts are Eric Smith and Scott Wareham, and they'll be your guides along this journey through death and dragons. So grab your Eldrin, strap on your swords, and get ready to defend the Argo Empire from evil. Throughout this series, if you have not caught up to the chapters being discussed today, we urge you to hit the pause button, grab your copy of this wonderful book, and catch up. We'll be here when you get back. The semifinals of the Arcanist tournament are here. Time to split the final two pairs into individual competitions. We have Niro Van Rovert, the acidic store worm Arcanist, Bram Topmore, the Titanic Stone Golem Arcanist, Zaxis Wren, the fiery Phoenix Arcanist, and Volke Savin, the Nightmare Arcanist, destined to win because, well, he'd our protagonist, right? Except, at the last minute, Niro asks Volke to throw the fight, and Volke agrees. For Volke, some things are more important than winning. But before we get into the book, we'll take a look at a piece of advice from the series. Step 83 on the Pillar of Bruma says sacrifice. Without it, we cannot achieve the greatest of accomplishments. With that, let's join Eric and Scott for chapters 46 through 50 of Coliseum Arcanist.
Welcome back to the Frith Guild podcast. I'm your host, Eric.
I'm co-host Scott.
And today we'll be diving into chapters 46 through 50 of the Coliseum Arcanist. And before we get started into today's podcast, I want to thank everyone for listening. And we do ask that you like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, just to show us some love here, to let us know we're doing well. And we also wanted to mention that the Frith Chronicles Wiki link is in the description below, along with the link for the Capital Station Discord server, so that way you can go on over and join in on the conversation. And today we'll get into chapters 46, the Throne Fight.
To give some background into this, Volke is talking to Niro before their fight in the Crown Tournament. Niro mentioned that Thiessen does have something that could save Adelgis and heal him, but he only will give it to Volke if Volke agrees to throw the fight. Volke realizes that Adelgis' life is worth more than the star shards that he would earn by winning the tournament and agrees to throw the fight. Niro's plan is for Volke to create an eclipse aura, but Volke mentions that he doesn't really know how to do this. So they're kind of left to fake fight each other a little bit until Niro can knock him out.
And Niro was definitely not the crowd favorite by any means going into this fight.
No, he wasn't supposed to have the skill that Volke has. He wasn't winning matches as excitingly as Volke was. So, very exciting match to come, though. And Niro's common tactic was really to use speed and to use the corrosive touch of the Storeworm. But Volke's armor, when he's merged with Luther, really defends against a lot of this. So it slows down the poison, and a lot of the attacks just don't do very much damage. And Volke quickly realizes that Niro is a very weak sword fighter. He really just relies on the strength of his Eldrin. Instead of just trying to take Volke out, Niro is really making a show of the event, trying to drag it out, so his father will be more proud of his victory. And Volke decides that if this is going to be the case, he can retaliate some, so he unleashes terrors on him. He ends up throwing the Storeworm out of the ring and then just barely allows Niro to push him out. Once he falls out, he is succumbing to some of the poison, so Zelfrey runs into the arena. He mimics a unicorn arcanist and then uses their powers to heal the poison. And at this point, Volke does tell Zelfrey, who is very confused by what just went on, about the deal that he made.
We just talk about how Volke would have absolutely destroyed Niro. And even just a few moments of Volke kind of fighting back and trying to give everybody a good show, he would have absolutely destroyed Niro. And then Volke does also remind Niro that if Niro reneges on this, that Volke will follow through with the beating that he's about to get, and he will make sure that Niro does fulfill his end of the bargain.
Very, very intense, and it is not only the two of them that realize the difference. Even the announcer was making comments about confusion on how the fight was going. So everyone's well aware that Volke is the better fighter. That brings us to chapter 47, which is recovery. So Volke goes up to the sky platform. He shadow steps up there to watch Zaxis' fight. And Zaxis is fighting the stone golem. And as soon as the fight begins, he goes straight for the Arcanist and knocks him out of the ring. Volke realizes that Zaxis' strategy is that he knows he can't knock the golem out of the ring, but as long as both he and Forsyth are in the ring at the end of 5 minutes, they'll win by decision. So he is running around trying to dodge hits. He does end up getting hit pretty bad, but he does outlast the golem and it does end up winning the match.
This is one of those times where it's actually surprising that Zaxis was able to come up with this strategy, because this is 100% not Zaxis' strategy with just trying to outlast the opponent. And there's definitely some like moments that we thought Zaxis was going to go down completely.
Yeah, it takes a lot of recognition for him to say, I'm not going to win this fight by fighting it, which is his normal MO. So after the match, Volke walks to Thiesen's lab. Niro ends up giving him 2 vials of sand. One is tan and one is pink. And the tan one is supposed to heal injuries. The pink one will heal the soul. But if you take the pink one and you aren't hurt, it's going to end up killing you. And this is where Niro kind of threatens Volke back and says that if you do try to sell these, they are extremely valuable. I will find out and extract my revenge on you. Volke asks him about them, and Niro doesn't really know exactly what they are, doesn't know what they come from. He just knows that he's seen them used before and that they are effective. And he ends up admitting to Volke that essentially he's only Adelgis' half-brother and cares a little bit for Adelgis, but not very much.
I don't care if Nero's a half-brother to Adelgis. Brother's a brother, blood's blood.
You would think.
Right. Like, I mean, Niro does also come back and say, hey, like, at least somebody cares about Adelgis. So he does say that he is slightly happy about that.
But he could be the one caring, and he chooses not to.
Unfortunately, it's not him, but somebody,
Somebody could.
Somebody.
So Volke goes straight to Adelgis. He mixes some water into the pink sand, gives it to Adelgis.
And Volke's sitting there thinking about Karna and Lyvia while he's waiting for the pink stuff to work. So what about Addie? Is she not good enough? Like, you liked her first. Starting to get some, starting to get some feelings here about these 3.
Too many options. Adelgis does end up waking up, so the elixir does cure him. And we find out that one of the magic powers of the ethereal Volke is that they can hear people's thoughts, but this is more of an active magic that they elect to use. And Adelgis can't turn it off now. So he is constantly hearing everyone's thoughts all the time. His magic was essentially warped by the leech.
Well, and Adelgis could even hear these thoughts while they were asleep. And Adelgis did say that there were people that just wanted him to die. And all I want to say to that is, who Adelgis? Mama Volke will take care of them. He'll make sure that they freaking get their just rewards.
Yes, you know who your real ones are.
Yep.
And part of hearing these thoughts is he does also know that Karna has actually been tailing Volke. She takes on the likeness of someone working in the hospital or other places that he's around, and she can hear him whenever he's nearby. Chapter 48 is the ghoul piece. And again, Adelgis is just talking through with Volke and essentially warning him, be like, hey, Karna's kind of tailing you. You should really get that figured out.
Adelgis also says that Volke has met her Eldrin previously, and I'm fairly certain, I may not be a super sleuth Sherlock Holmes here, but fairly certain guy outside that was trying to convince Volke to go and watch her show to begin with was her Eldrin.
That was my thought as well. The little coat too small and hat too big. He fits.
He's drawing too much attention. He's got to be the one.
So Zelfrey does join them. He brings Zaxis from the arena. Zaxis has been getting drunk with Zelfrey because Zelfrey knows that it will numb the pain. So even though he's been healed, there's still some lasting effects. And Gilly joins them as well. She's also very excited to see Volke, to see that Adelgis was healed. She also does poke a little fun at Zelfrey, of course, gotta poke the bear. Zaxis confronts Volke about his fight and is essentially angry at him for throwing the fight because Ilya is now more proud of Volke because he is a martyr for Adelgis, and now Zaxis won't have the chance to fight him in the arena and won't get to prove that he's the superior fighter. Adelgis gets kind of fed up with this and touches Zaxis and puts him to sleep and doesn't want them to fight, let him sleep it off a little bit. Volke also ends up falling asleep, and he's woken up by Addie, who gives him a tender touch and a little kiss, and again, Volke realizes that it's Karna. He tells her not to take Addie's form, and she teases Volke with the opportunities of a doppelganger.
Giggity, giggity.
What's even better than this is in the same room Adelgis has been in, so not only did he get to hear all the thoughts, he also got to watch it take place. And in all reality, Fane is probably there as well, so he probably also got to watch and listen in.
Like, I don't know what it is about everybody wanting to watch Volke. I guess everybody likes to watch there.
He's some type of stud there. Karna does have the ghoul trinket, and before she gives it to Volke, she does ask him who the most attractive woman is. And Volke very honestly says that she is. She is happy with this answer, and she wants to leave right away. And Adelgis, since he's now feeling better, decides that he wants to come as well.
And this is where chapter 49 starts up as the occult compass. Adelgis does know that Karna has a lot of deep secrets and has agreed with her to not divulge any of them so long as she doesn't lie to Volke. And Adelgis is seeming rather cold to Volke lately.
And some of that might be, Adelgis mentions that he can essentially hear everyone's thoughts, and this includes all their petty thoughts and some of the noise that comes through with them. So it could very well be impacting his mood just because he hears the negatives that you don't usually hear.
But I mean, Volke even made a comment about him looking like a vagabond like 5 minutes after Adelgis is resurrected, essentially. Volke goes to Ilya's room back at the inn to get the occult compass, and Ilya has taken a rather aggressive attitude towards him. Granted, Volke hasn't really had a chance to mention why he threw the fight, but Volke does want to borrow the compass, so it's kind of that, like, how do we get this the fastest? Now, one thing I did think about was, would the compass work on a doppelganger, since the doppelgangers can hide their magic from mimics? Or is this something that, like, doesn't matter what you are, because it said they can find anything or any Eldrin? But again, it's just one of those inner workings of how the magic works and how the doppelganger specifically can hide their magic.
It is a good question, and the one thing I think is the occult compass isn't based on mimic magic. It's based on like the all-seeing Sphinx. So it would really depend if the Sphinx can identify the doppelganger or not. And I'm curious as well. It's also a curious one because there just aren't very many doppelgangers. Like, it's a tough one to test out.
Right. We'll have to think about that one. Anybody else wants to put their input on that, please let us know what you think. So Ilya does decide that she wants to send Nicholin with Volke just to make sure that Volke doesn't get in any trouble.
Because Nicholin is so great at keeping people out of trouble.
Just try not to like have him get swallowed and then teleporting out of the person.
Falling into mugs of ale.
Right. So Nicholin is kind of feeling like a forgotten child between Ilya and Zaxis since they became an item. And Nicholin has decided that he's going to be extra sneaky when he's tricking Zaxis, because he said that he can trick Zaxis whenever he wants without Zaxis actually knowing that it was Nicholin that did it. Volke gets out of the inn, and all of a sudden now he's got this new posse. He's got Adelgis, he's got Fane, and Karna with them, and then they all got their Eldrin. And all I can think about is them walking down the middle of the street, the four of them like shoulder to shoulder, early hours in the morning. These people merchants are trying to get their carts packed up so they can get the hell out of there before the end of the tournament. And just seeing all of them walking down like, oh gosh, what crap are they about to start? this is where Volke actually realizes he probably hasn't seen Karna's Eldarin, but Adelgis does say that he has been, but Volke has never recognized him.
And another curious thought about those is the doppelganger is always taken on someone else's look. I'm always curious what they look like when they aren't taking on an appearance. Do they have like a default like me character that's kind of what I picture happens when they're not transformed, just a little like do.
The me central or whatever it's called.
Yes.
That music instantly popped in my head.
Bopping up and down a little bit.
Doppelgangers are scarecrow-looking beasts with hay bodies that are stained with blood. They are formed by the mother of shapeshifters to be the size of a fully grown human adult, and just like nightmares and reapers, the older a doppelganger gets, the more clothing they sprout. Since doppelgangers shapeshift to look like other humans, few have ever seen their base scarecrow form. If a doppelganger shifts into a larger human or smaller one, the hay of their body flushes out or condenses as needed. When untransformed, they smell of gore.
And then Volke is probably also realizing that it would be really annoying to be able to hear everybody's thoughts at all times. And I feel bad enough that people have to hear what comes out of my mouth that doesn't get filtered from my brain to my mouth at work. And I've apologized for that. And my wife has apologized for that as well. So I can only imagine the sheer amount of random thoughts that he hears.
And also just the noise of it. If you're in a crowded person, you're hearing everybody's thoughts all the time. I don't know how you would filter anything in and out or make any. It just seems like it'd be a constant white noise going on.
So Volke is continuing to follow the compass and ends up at an old woodworking shop. Volke does offer to go in to investigate and gather information only. So he's not going to fight anybody. And maybe we should have told somebody that Volke is going to look for this ghoul arcanist. Like, maybe there's somebody in particular that he is an apprentice to or a mentor that he has.
That's
like,
really worried about his safety.
Right, is worried about his safety. Maybe like, I don't know, Master Zelfrey?
Nope, he's good.
So Volke sees this as his duty as being part of the member of the Frith Guild. And before he goes in there, he just tells Nicholin, like, hey, if anything happens, go tell Zelfrey.
Instead of telling him beforehand. Tell
Right.
him after the fact. And when they're going in, Karna also wants to go in, but Volke doesn't trust her. And also, she doesn't have a very good escape path where Nicholin can always teleport out. He can always shadow step away. So there is some reason to his madness that, it's a lot easier for them to get out if it does turn into a nasty situation.
And here starts chapter 50, the Ghoul Letter. Now, Luther does ask to merge with Volke as soon as they get inside of the woodworking shop. Volke has to go like up the stairs, and Volke mentions that he didn't want to shadow step because he didn't want to like end up in somewhere where he didn't know where he was and possibly giving away the element of surprise. I'm sure with the amount of creaking boards that he steps on the stairs, probably gave away that a long time ago. Luther wants to be merged with Volke, and he's like, no, you're going to make too much noise if we're merged together. He wants to be all secret, stealthy, SEAL Team 6 going dark. And he realizes that he needs to start prioritizing information like Zelfrey would. So he finds that this place that they're at is basically like the epitome of creepy. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Shrieking Shack from Harry Potter. Like, boards everywhere, everything's torn up, there's nothing that's intact, it's all covered in dust and cobwebs. And then Volke's got his sword in his hand and he just drops it into the shadows. Like, does he have to like consciously think to put it through the shadows, or would it fall on the ground if he didn't?
It's a curious question.
So yeah, like, does he have to physically put it in the ground? Like, questions, all the questions. So Volke finds coded letters sitting on the table, and Luther wants to leave immediately because coded letters means that there's more than one person involved. And this is probably an organization rather than just the individual. So Luther is just like, hey, let's grab these and get the hell out. So as Volke is gathering these letters, the ghoul arcanist happens to just stumble in and not notice Volke and Luther and Nicholin in there. And out of nowhere, Nicholin's just like, hey, like, why would you give up your element of surprise?
And so much for keeping him out of trouble. Let's just alert the enemy.
Like, come on. Volke, as he's talking to the ghoul arcanist, he does suspect that it's Callisto but the ghoul arcanist actually confirms that it was not, and that this is way above Callisto's level of thought processing. So he basically calling Callisto stupid, not being able to come up with this kind of a plan.
He's a pawn.
Right. And the ghoul wants to kill Volke, but the Arcanist is actually holding him back. And the fight kind of ensues, but Volke's physical sword attacks aren't really doing any kind of damage to the actual ghoul itself. We do notice that with the ghoul Arcanist that he has a cracked mark, just like with Volke and Luther, indicating that he did. And thankfully, Nicholin's thinking about it. He pops out of the house, grabs Fane, pops him back in, and gets Fane into the fight. And then he started blasting ice everywhere, and ends up scaring off the pair of them.
Which the ice probably impacts Volke. This is really organized chaos at best. This is not any sort of planned out encounter.
At least Fane was sensible enough to see the bag of money that was just sitting on the couch and takes it. And Volke kind of just ignores this. And as he keeps grabbing all these letters that he found, and to be honest, Fane deserves it. Hey, the ghoul left it. I mean, it's fair game now. And I don't care whether you're past pirate or not. That's fair game, okay? So Volke takes all these letters downstairs, and Volke's like, what the hell is this kind of gibberish? And Adelgis takes a look at him. He's like, oh, this is exactly what they say. He says, the first letter says to get the number of Knights Draconic that are in the Dragon District.
There's also a lot of questions about trinkets. We saw some of the ones Karna had brought up, they're mentioned in the letter. So something going on with trinkets in this organization.
And this is definitely that all this information is that little bit here and there that they can piece together to get the whole picture. So that way, whatever their plan is, that they can put it together. Does make a very large note to point out the very last letter that is written reads that the plan is to steal the runestones after the Sovereign Dragon Tournament bonding ceremony during that night. And thankfully, we found this letter because that's kind of an important thing to know. And this is where chapter 50 ends, and we'll jump into our bestiary where we have the Stoorworm and the Ghoul.
So the Stoorworm is a long sea serpent with black scales, gold eyes, and scarlet fins. And it's about 30 feet long from the head to the tip of the tail, so absolutely massive. Mythology, this does come from a gigantic evil sea serpent of Orcadian folklore, capable of contaminating plants, destroying animals, homes, merely with its putrid breath. It's a very gross creature. So Trial of Worth is surviving an ocean storm without assistance. It is tier 3, and its reproduction is through progeny, commonly found with nesting grounds near shipwrecks. Evocation, they are able to evoke poison. We saw that with the Stoorworm, but we don't have much information on their other magical abilities.
And the second mystical creature we're going to go over today is the Ghoul. And this is described as a half-decaying corpse that feeds on children and whose skin is said to cause sickness. So keep this one away from the children's ward in the hospitals. The mythology for a ghoul comes from Arabic, which is a demon-like being or monstrous humanoid, often associated with graveyards and the consumption of human flesh. The Trial of Worth requires the essential arcanist to eat the flesh of someone they just murdered. They are a tier 2 mystical creature, and their reproduction is that they are created from dead bodies by the Keeper of Corpses. And that is the Keeper of Corpses is something we're going to kind of go over later on in the series. As far as the magic itself goes, it's able to become invisible. We know that. We also know that it's able to extend its fingernails and use its fingernails as basically like daggers. So I would say probably its evocation. It would be something of that sort for its fingernails growing into daggers. And it looks like that's about all we know about the ghoul from the series. And we do want to thank everybody for listening today. We want to remind everybody that we do post new episodes every Wednesday morning around 11 Eastern, 10 Central, and 8 Pacific Standard. We're on all podcasting platforms, and we are also on YouTube for videos as well. We want to thank our editor, Dan Mackison, for including pictures and links to everything. And if you want to reach out to us, we are on Gmail at frithguildpod@gmail.com or on Facebook or other social medias at Frith Guild Podcast. Do you want to thank the Frith Chronicles Wiki, and do remind everybody that is a great resource to use in the next few weeks. I do also want to mention that our interview for Between Books 3 and 4 is going to be John Stovall, Shammy's husband, as he is also an author, and we just wanted to sit down and talk with him. So we're definitely excited to talk with him. Scott, did you have anything else you'd like to add today?
Like, share, subscribe. Feel the love.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk to you everybody next week.